Welcome into the Paul Farrington Show. Paul, joined by Robert, Ziggy, Ziegler for an emergency episode this morning, on this Monday morning, as Jaire Alexander has been released by the Green Bay Packers. We just said, Ziggy, what a crazy ending to this saga here where, a couple months ago we came on this show and we said, yep, he's gone. No chance Jaire comes back. A couple weeks ago we hopped on and, well, it looks like Jaire will be back despite what we all believed in the beginning. And here we are today now. With Jaire Alexander finally being cut. And it's Monday, June 9th. So June 9th was the day before training camp. As you said, something would happen. Now, I think you were saying you thought he'd get signed by training camp, but something did happen.
My position was always, I really thought Jaire was going to be back. And actually, I think it's interesting the Packers have decided to move on. People are wondering and speculating where he could land. We'll get to that later. I think this should make any team that signs him a little bit nervous. But I think right now the thing to talk about is just the impact of Jaire getting cut.
Yeah, and the reason why for some Packers fans or for anyone who's following the situation now that Jaire's a free agent, I could see people sitting back and going like, wow, Jaire Alexander's 28 years old and he's a pretty good cornerback. I remember him being an All-Pro and
he was the cornerstone when they were transitioned to Jordan Love. Like, he's the guy who was a star in both regimes.
Oh yeah, he's been one of the stars that's in Green Bay for the past five years or so. I can't remember how long Jaire's been there now, 5-6 years.
Not the past couple of years.
That's the problem. Is it's the best ability is availability. You're going to see that a lot if you're in the Packer circles over the next few days here. And when you break it down, Jaire Alexander since 2020. So the 2021 season, 4 games, shoulder injury. 2022, he played 15 games. 2023, he played just 7 games with back and shoulder issues. In 2024, 7 games again. And this is because the PCL injury, quad injury. And it gets to the point where I actually thought it was really funny. If you haven't seen it yet, they interviewed Mark Murphy and he's out on a golf course. He's about to go tee off right now. And you just see him say, Jaire's a good guy and he's a great player, but he's never on the field. And that's an unfortunate part of the business in the NFL. And you could see the Packers coaches, then the front office, they're getting frustrated with that waiting game every week of how hurt is Jaire and is he too hurt to play? And Jeff Hafley, in the first year as a defensive coordinator, is changing up his entire game plan around Jaire week by week. And I mean, everyone remembers last season, towards the end of the year, when they were getting ready to play the Vikings, it was like, will Jaire be back or not? And that conversation was taking place every single day. And I can see that getting exhausted, even if, Jaire has been a good teammate this offseason and has seemingly done the right things to try and make this work out in the public eye. Behind the scenes, he clearly wanted more money, and the reports are from Albert Breer that the Packers offered him an incentive-based 1-year deal, and Jaire feels that he can make more money on the open market. And as you just said, Ziggy, that now makes me hesitate as someone who's been wanting to bring him in if this happened as a Viking fan, because the Packers clearly are not confident anymore.
Yeah, well, I think this was a measure of last resort. I do not think either side wanted it to go on this long.
Yeah.
The Packers, by cutting him now, are splitting their $17 million in cap savings, right? It's only $7.5 this year and $10 million in 2026, rather than getting it all now.
Yeah.
Jaire doesn't get a shot at a deal in the open market that he would have before free agency. Like, neither side is this a great outcome. They would have rather it been resolved earlier, which is why I think ultimately, like, the Packers were willing to take Jaire back. Jaire clearly wanted to come back, but they couldn't agree on the value. And if the Green Bay Packers, who know Jaire better than anybody, they know how great he can be better than anybody, but they also know the character issues better than anybody. They know the injury issues better than anybody. They know how it goes behind the scenes better than anybody. If they don't want him, I think this is generally true of free agents, and it's especially true of guys who are really good but have fallen off, either due to injury or to behavior or whatever. You have to be very nervous committing money to those guys, because if the Green Bay Packers aren't, I'm not sure any team should be.
It's a great point, and we'll get into a couple more of the teams in a few minutes here on Jaire. We'll stick on the Packers side for now. And Jordan Schultz reported this morning, he said, allegedly the Packers and Bills were working on a trade this offseason, trying to get Jaire to Buffalo. those talks continued through draft night, and ultimately they could not either find a deal there. So the Bills went and signed Maxwell Hairston, or drafted Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky. And, we'll see what happens as we get into the teams that might look for Jaire. That could still be on the table in Buffalo, but the Packers were actively shopping him. And at the end of the day, when teams had this, a lot of teams, I believe, had that sense that this was going to happen at some point. Teams know a little bit more than a lot of the media personalities do. And if they knew that Green Bay in all likelihood wasn't going to bring him back, there's no reason to, send over some sort of compensation that could be valuable for you. As far as Green Bay goes and its impact on next year, again, we're always honest on this show. I think this is a huge, huge loss for the Packers. Now, you can easily sit back and say Jaire doesn't play. So are we actually losing anything with him being on the bench? And my response would be, well, we can't just assume injury. And when he's on the field, he is by far your best cornerback. And the whole issue we've had this entire offseason that Ziggy and I and Jack, we've brought up time and time again, is it felt like for this Packer defense to be elite next year. Not good, not very good, but elite, was for Jaire Alexander to be there and to be healthy. Because now you have a cornerback room that, yes, you might believe in them, but it's a thin room, man. And it's an unproven room. You have Valentine, Keyshawn Nixon, and Nate Hobbs. One of those guys goes down. I don't know how much faith I have in them. And the Packers, they might still make a one-year move here for someone. We talked about maybe Asante Samuel, or maybe they made a move for Jalen Ramsey. Like, that's on the table. But as Ziggy pointed out when I brought that up to him, he said, well, if you wanted an older, injury-riddled cornerback, you would have just kept Jaire. So I think as far as the Packers, Super Bowl aspirations go, because that's the ultimate goal here, the season's, not in jeopardy or anything with losing Jaire. But I just think it's similar to like the Lions losing Frank Ragnow. You lose a really, really good player, and there are going to be ripple effects. So my
position on this has changed. I'm not sure I agree with that.
Oh, sure. I'd be open to discuss.
Yeah, well, fans have been in our comments saying that's not true every time we say it. So I finally decided to listen to them and look into it a little bit. And I think we've done this a little bit, but the media writ large, I think, has sort of ignored that the Green Bay passing defense last year was very good and close to elite. They were 10th in passing touchdowns per game. If they'd given up one fewer, they would have been 5th in the entire NFL. Passing yards per game, opponents, they were 8th in the NFL. EPA per pass, if you're one of those advanced stat folks, they were 6th in the NFL, tied with the Texans, Chargers, and just behind the Lions. And then you look at what they did. They upgraded the obvious weak point in the room, Eric Stokes with Nate Hobbs. Mm-hmm. Like, depth is an issue, and I can see them going out to sign a depth piece or two. But keeping Jaire Alexander, because you need a guy who's reliable if somebody gets hurt. You're looking for someone who can play 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 games if you need to, is just sort of silly. Like, that's probably not who Jaire Alexander is at this point in his career. They had a very, very good passing defense, just a click below elite last year. And they upgraded it already. Like, some Packers fans are acting like the sky is falling. And if you'd asked me a few weeks
ago,
I might have said the same.
It's not falling.
I think the passing defense is in a great position to be elite next year. You've got year 2 of a coordinator. You've got improved players. Like, I don't think there's any reason for them to be desperately star hunting here.
Well, I feel like you were kind of a little contradictory with Jaire was not going to be your hope as a Packer fan was not for Jaire just to be like the stable veteran. Your hope for him was to be the cornerback one shutdown corner that he's been throughout most of his career when he's healthy. So like, that's like, yeah, if you wanted Jaire to just be there and be a stable veteran, like that has value. But to me, the hit comes in that I thought if Jaire was able to stay on the field, and I understand everyone that saying Jaire being on the field may be a little aggressive or a little hopeful given his recent injury history. But your hope was that he would be on the field and be cornerback one in Green Bay. If you want a stable veteran, you could go out and get someone on a 1-year deal. Like, that can happen. But that's not where losing Jaire hurts to me. It's the potential of what he could have been this year.
Yeah, well, the Packers, who maybe that's unfair, know more about Jaire than anybody, don't believe if they thought there was even a chance that would happen.
Oh, clearly
I think they would have kept him.
Yeah, clearly so they don't.
They know the injuries. They know the player. They know the personality. I don't think you always have to defer to teams, right? Sometimes teams make terrible boneheaded decisions, but this is a situation where there's lots that we don't know.
Yes.
And I'm inclined to trust the Packers, their doctors, the leaders in the room to decide, look, we've already got a room that has a bunch of great players. We don't need to deal with the Jaire headache. Because as you said at the start of the show, right? Having to mess with your defensive game plan every single week because you're not sure if Jaire is going to play, or maybe he'll play 2 or 3 snaps and then take himself out. Like you can't do that as a defensive coordinator. That holds you back.
Well, and that's what Albert Breer was saying when he reported some of the story. He was saying Jeff Hafley week by week would be impacting his defensive game plan because Jaire's that important to the defensive game plan based on his availability. So, but that's what I mean. I think that it hurts him a lot because of course, anytime you take out a potential number 1 cornerback, there's going to be some ripple effect there. But yeah, at this point in time, the fair thing to say, if I were to try and take off my you little utopia Paul Farrington world sunglasses, it would be, he probably was going to get hurt again. Now you're just paying Jaire a ton of money if you were to have caved, you're paying him a ton of money to be on the bench again and to be a headache. Even if he's not, a huge locker room problem, it's still a headache in planning for the games. And you got a great secondary if you look at it as a whole, because Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams and Javon Bullard, like that's a really good safety room there. So you have a little bit of
cornerbacks.
Yeah, then they've decent cornerbacks. I'm not I'm not desperate for any of them to be on my team, but I think that they're good cornerbacks. They would be really good if they had a number 1 corner in the room with them. So someone's going to, and this is the whole theme, right? This is the Packers theme this entire offseason, I think. Someone step up. You're talking about it on the defensive line. You're talking about it in the receiver room. You're talking about it now in the cornerback room. Every single year, you're talking about Jordan Love. There's so much talent on the Green Bay team, but there are going to have to be a couple guys to step up to the challenge and play like in the elite talent at their position. So we didn't see it last year at receiver, and Jordan Love got hurt, and no one did it at pass rush. And that's why you're an 11-6 team and not a 13-4 team contending for the 1 seed with the Vikings and the Lions. So that's what it all comes down to me for Green Bay is you got this slew of guys who have said so many times need to look themselves in the mirror and get better. And if they do, that's when this team becomes really, really dangerous. But if they don't do that, which we didn't see last year, I think their ceiling is probably capped again by a divisional round game. Because I don't think they're better than Detroit. And I'm not sure they're better than Minnesota. But I think they have the ability to.
I certainly expect the Packers to be better than Minnesota this year. I think the more you go back and look at it, Keyshawn Nixon definitely looks like a better player than I originally thought. Mm-hmm. We're starting to get in that point in the offseason where you have nothing to do except like watch Keyshawn Nixon reps over and over again and see what this guy can do, because clearly the Packers see something I don't. It's the same thing I did with Darnold last year, right? I'm like, why do the Minnesota Vikings think Sam Darnold is going to be like a great QB1 for us? So I went back and watched some of the Panthers ad nauseum and started to see it. I'm starting to get there of Keyshawn Nixon. Not that he's going to be like a first-team All-Pro, but that he will be a strong outside corner. And I mean, Paul, you know this as Vikings fans. We saw this with Jaire Alexander. With safety help, anybody can hold Justin Jefferson to 8 yards and talk about how great they are.
All right. Relax.
I'm just saying.
Relax. It's a Monday morning, man. I don't want to get riled up on a Monday morning.
When you've got great safeties, it's a lot easier for cornerbacks to look better. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. But look, I haven't even finished my cup of coffee yet. So can we like keep this civil before?
All right. Well, let's keep this civil. Talk about Minnesota again. Do you think the Minnesota Vikings are going to go after Jaire Alexander?
Yeah, 100%. Of course, I think they will. Despite what Mekhi Blackman has been on record saying, I think maybe this show is the only one now to twice quote Mekhi Blackman this offseason, who was not a specifically Viking show. But Mekhi Blackman said that, essentially summarizing that the Vikings have a really good cornerback room. And I don't necessarily disagree with. I disagree with him. That's a really good room, but it kind of reminds me in some ways of the Packer room. Like, I like Byron Murphy. I think Byron Murphy's the best of the bunch between the two teams, but the Viking cornerback room has some holes, and you could all tell that on draft night I wanted to address some of those holes with Will Johnson. Like that there was a reason I was so upset that the Vikings didn't draft Will Johnson. It's because the secondary concerns me, especially when we have to go up against Jordan Love and we have to go up against Jared Goff. And if Caleb takes a leap, Caleb twice a year. So I expect the Vikings to be very interested in Jaire. And I think Jaire Alexander should also be very interested in the Vikings. He, for the first reason alone, before you could get into anything else, I bet there's a part of Jaire that's like, screw this. I want to go show these guys I can still play, that they made a mistake. Whether, money, I'm sure will be a huge topic, but there has to be a little bit of that like revenge mindset that exists in Jaire right now to a degree. Number two, the Vikings are a team that's, I think, actually competitive in a like potential Super Bowl contender this year. This is all riding on. Look at Ziggy start to smile here. This is all riding on JJ McCarthy. JJ doesn't need to be Tom Brady for the Vikings to be an NFC Championship level team. Look, come on. I'm not saying that the Vikings are going to march to the NFC Championship. I'm saying they have a really good team. I'm saying they have a really good team, and that if JJ McCarthy is decent, they should be very competitive. They should be a playoff team if JJ McCarthy's decent. Sure. Yeah, maybe I'll walk back to Super Bowl. That would, of course, be unbelievable. Amazing. But the Vikings should be a competitive team next year. That is, I think, a reasonable expectation for them. There's a chance they suck. I think
you should be looking at additions. If you're Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, just signed a nice big deal, you should be looking at additions as if you will be a good competitive team next year. Yeah,
that is exactly what they should be doing as well. And they still have a few holes to fill because remember, they lost Bynum, they lost Shaq Griffin, they lost Gilmore. No matter how well those guys, Bynum had a really good year, but the other guys started to struggle a bit down the stretch.
They're still players.
Yeah, but they could use, and the Vikings can use help in that cornerback room. So I think they'll absolutely take a look at it. Now, I don't know if we're going to offer him. I could see it being a 1-year deal as well. I don't know how much money the Vikings would be willing to ship over to Jaire for one season, but this is where I come back to if it's all an if game. If he stays healthy, it would be a huge signing, and I'd be willing to roll the dice because I think it's a really good team.
Well, we talk about teams of tough cap situations. The Minnesota Vikings are in a much worse state than Green Bay.
Yeah, but I think you can always work the books. Like there's always ways to work the books.
So that is true, but when you're projected $60 million over the cap next year, like if Jaire if he wants a 1-year incentive laden deal, fair enough. We can easily make that work. If Jaire is looking for a substantial contract, I'm not saying the contracts.
Who's going to give it to him though? Like who right now would, in their right mind, give Jaire Alexander a long-term massive contract? Like no one's doing that.
Clearly, he thinks so. So I don't know.
But I think he might just be wrong
to hold out for longer. Like I don't know what Jaire's plan is here exactly, because it seemed to me like if the Packers were willing to like rip up the contract and only hold him for 1 year, which they surely were, playing in Green Bay, being healthy, putting together a great season in a highly competitive defense, which I think is something he could have done. I mean, obviously you worry about the injuries or whatever, but the defense was already good, and I don't think that was the public perception, so he'd get a lot of credit if they were great. Like, I don't think there's a better situation out there waiting for him. Then you're entering your 29, you can get a nice big third contract and call it a day for your career.
Nothing better than the Vikings.
I mean, with Minnesota, I don't know if we've got the money to pay him what he wants. Buffalo, I don't know if they've got the money to pay him what he wants. I don't know if a bottom feeder team in the NFL, I mean, you only need one dumb team like the Raiders or the Colts or like a desperate team like the Giants to like be willing to pay a huge amount of money for a guy and outbid everybody else. But I don't know what his plan is. And if you've got players who think they're worth a lot more than they're getting paid, I think that's a really bad vibe to add to your locker room. Like Minnesota right now, the vibes are incredible. I mean, if you've seen Justin Jefferson at OTAs, this is the first time he's been there in years. They're having a great time. They're working really, really hard. I don't want to add a disgruntled Jaire to the room, even if he juice us up for 2 Packers games a year. Like, that's not where this team's at. We've beaten the Packers a bunch of times in a row.
If he signs, I don't think he'll be disgruntled because he's actively making that decision. The only way he'd be disgruntled is that, my market wasn't good enough. But that's a clear signal to Jaire that you need to play better. And look,
is it a clear signal to Jaire?
I think it would be.
I feel like he's ignoring the clear signals. If Green Bay is willing to cut him, that is a signal you are not worth what you think you are.
Yeah, well, I'm saying that would be a signal that everyone else agrees. And if everybody else agrees on it, then Jaire is going to have to stand up and say, okay, I need to be on the field for a season and play well before I can demand this. Like, unless he's completely unreasonable. Which maybe is the
Alexander,
case.
Are you saying he's never been unreasonable during his career?
You were here, and I was here 2 weeks ago saying how mature Jaire Alexander's been through this process, which maybe we've been completely wrong, and how much he's grown up.
But here's the question. You have to, like, Jaire Alexander has played media games before, and you've got a report coming out saying this is a guy who knows that there's a bigger market out there for him than what Green Bay is willing to pay him. Who's telling the media that? Who's coming out here saying Green Bay shouldn't have cut me? I'm going to go get rich somewhere else. You think the Packers are leaking that to reporters?
Oh, yeah.
The Packers are coming out and saying, yeah, we're too poor to re-sign Jaire Alexander. We know he's worth a lot more than we're willing to give him. Really?
But that's what I'm saying is that the Packers aren't going to give it to him. And then you got Buffalo or the Eagles are being mentioned, which is, that would just be really annoying. Even if Jaire wound up not playing, just the Eagles' ability to do the thing that their fans want, to do the obvious, like, let's take a risk on the superstar who's been injured and he'll probably be healthy for a full season, and they'll have Cooper DeJean and Quinion Mitchell. It'll be amazing. But if all these teams look at Jaire and go, well, we could give you a 1-year prove-it deal, I don't know how disgruntled he might be a little pissed off, but at some point there needs to be the realization that you haven't played for 3 years and teams are not going to invest in you willy-nilly.
Well, the Packers thought he would have that realization. That is why this dragged on until June 9th, literally the last day possible that they could justify cutting him. They believed that he was going to rework his contract to a level that they saw reasonable. That's the only reason, if you're Green Bay, not to do this immediately after the draft. And when you realize you can't trade him.
It really has been a fascinating saga, though, with the ups and the downs. There really were moments in this where I thought it was 100% in either direction in terms of him staying or leaving.
I did too. But if the Packers thought Jaire was going to be reasonable and sign a contract, like you said, that recognizes that he's somebody who's been injured a bunch, that when he's been on the field, he has been mediocre just because of the injuries, I think, adding up, that teams are worried about his character issues. Like, if he's not willing to sign a deal commensurate with that with Green Bay, and he's leaking to the media, hey, I'm going to get way more money somewhere else, suck it, Packers, which is sort of what it feels like when these reports are coming out saying Jaire is going to get a lot more in the open market, probably coming from his agent. It's hard for me to buy into the story you've told me where he's going to have the realization. Maybe he's right. We're all idiots. And he's going to sign a 2 years, $60 million deal or something.
There are dumb teams.
But I think at this point in the game, it's June. Training camp or mandatory mini camp for a lot of teams starts tomorrow. I don't buy for a second that there is a team out there willing to sign Jaire to a giant deal. Say, I know it's a different situation, but the Titans were willing to give L'Jarius Sneed. I just don't think that's coming.
I really can see him becoming a Minnesota Viking. I think that is 1,000% on the table. I see the Lions
the right
making
kind
a
of
move.
Deal with us. Sure, he'll probably play great.
That is the. Well, that's the stereotypical Packer to Viking transition. Packers let him go, maybe. And that's the other thing. I want to also say, I want to be careful with the choice of words here. I always respect the Packers and their decision making in that they are willing to do things that, I think most teams won't. A lot of teams would sit back and look at the Jaire situation, and given his history with the team and given his potential when he's on the field, would make a mistake and might pay him more than they probably should. And the Packers, and when it comes to these decisions, yes, Brett Favre did have an unbelievable year with the Vikings after he left. But, Aaron Rodgers, that was clearly the right decision by Green Bay. And letting Aaron go, who knows? Because Aaron got hurt. So it's. I think when we look back on the Aaron Rodgers situation, had he been healthy that year, maybe it would have been better. Maybe it would have been a great year for the Jets. So I can't just automatically say that Aaron flamed out. But given the way it turned out, Aaron was getting older, and Jordan Love looks like he's going to be a very good quarterback for years to come. So, and there's more than just the quarterbacks. Those are just the primary examples. Where Green Bay, when your time is up in Green Bay, they often are able to make the move. That teams might hang on a little longer or spend a little more money than they should, and you do have to commend them that at least they make that decision, and it usually works out for them. So again, it would be awesome to see Jaire come to the Vikings and have that magical year that some former Packers have had on Minnesota. But in all likelihood, that probably wouldn't happen. So that's just another example of Green Bay making decisions that they believe in and not really caring what people think. I know I think Jaire, as far as a fan favorite, I think he clearly was for a long time, but even with Packer fans, I think his welcome was starting to strain a little bit.
It's just hard when the guy's not on the field.
Yeah, and I think the Packer fans, still like him. I don't think he's really done that much to make you dislike him if you're a Packer fan. I'm trying to think off the top of my... I know there's the whole captain saga. There's been things that would bother you, but he seems like a guy that everyone in the locker room liked. And it was just the coaches.
He's not Antonio Brown.
No, he's not Antonio Brown. I don't think this is a Jaire Alexander's cut and we're good. When Aaron Rodgers left, Packers fans said good riddance. I don't think that's the case. And I could be wrong. I don't have the complete pulse of Packer Nation. I think this is more of a, he never played. We had to let him go. I hope he does well somewhere that's not the NFC North. That would be my guess of the Green Bay reaction to this. So, all right, Ziggy, any I know you have to get going, believe it or not, shockingly, we do. This is a Monday morning, so there is work to be done still. Any final take here?
The only thing that's on my mind is I'm just trying to think what team, if there's a team out there, could Jaire possibly be thinking is going to give him the big deal?
Who can I coerce?
The only teams I can think of that would be remotely interested in that are the Raiders and the Patriots.
The Raiders was the team that jumped out to me that maybe would do something stupid.
The Raiders could do something crazy. The Patriots have spent so much money in free agency on questionable defensive players. They could use a cornerback. What's one more? Contender-wise, I think Minnesota is an option. Detroit is a potential option. Buffalo is an option. The question is just going to be, what does Jaire actually want? And given this deal, the way this ended, Jaire had a chance to play for a team he liked and believed in on a 1-year incentive-based deal that wouldn't involve moving or learning a new defense or anything like that, and he passed. For that reason, I've been wrong on Jaire every step of the way. Mm-hmm. I was convinced he was coming back to Green Bay, so maybe you shouldn't listen to me. But I'd be shocked if we get a news report that's Jaire Alexander signs a 1-year, $4 million base deal with incentives with insert contender.
Yes, I'm happy you said that, actually, because when I mentioned it before, I didn't bring this part up, where clearly the number one issue to Jaire seems to be money. And I'm not going to argue. If you want to make as much money as you can, go for it.
He's probably my guess is he's one of those players who recognizes he doesn't need more money, but sees the money thing as an issue of respect. He feels like the Packers are just not respecting his talent enough because of the deal they gave him.
To a degree, I'm sure that there's also a if I can squeeze out an extra $8 million, I want to do that. And this is probably the last big deal. If he thinks he can get a big deal, which I really don't know if I believe he thinks that, but if he believes he can get a big deal, then this would probably be the last one of his career.
Yeah, well, but also Jaire got paid $47 million for 14 games on his most recent extension. So I don't want to hear Jaire saying, man, I need more money. I'm going to the poorhouse. I only got paid $3 million a game.
Yeah, it's he's fine. Jaire Alexander's doing fine. But that's why it's a little weird. I bet he probably just wants to test the market. And maybe he just wants to leave Green Bay. Maybe he's ready to go somewhere else. That could be part of it.
I don't think so.
He wanted to go back.
Talking with the rookies, he wanted to come back. It's a money issue.
If if you're Jaire Alexander, this is the last thing we can do here. If you were Jaire Alexander, Ziggy, where would you go now?
Whoever pays me the most money.
Like that's it. Straight. Let's say you. Yeah, I guess it's a stupid question. That's what he wants to do. Because I was gonna say it seems the Ravens, Eagles, Vikings, Bills. I've seen the Rams thrown around, but like those are the teams it appears out of like contenders that might make a move for Jaire. But yeah, you're right. It's going to be who offers him the biggest paycheck.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
You freed up $17 million. If you needed a bunch of cap space to go and add a player who's holding out, who could be a star that transforms your defense and is likely to actually play, could this be an early Trey Hendrickson sign? Famous trader of players, Mike Brown and the Cincinnati Bengals. They're willing to trade anybody who plays for him, it seems.
There's two reasons I'd hesitate on that. One is the Bengals defense, they can't take hits. Like that defense, they want to win a Super Bowl. And when you have Joe Burrow, you're a Super Bowl contender. You need Trey Hendrickson in that room. Like you need him there. But if you were going to make that move, let's pretend they were going to do that. I thought you just said that the Packers are in no situation to be taking on that much money.
Yeah, I'm kidding. There's no way. You're going to hear some people connecting to Trey Hendrickson. The Bengals, first of all, don't trade their players. That was a joke. Second of all, you can't get him, probably. You can't afford him. I don't think that this is a move that the Packers are going to look for a star, but it's fun to think about. And if you're the Green Bay Packers, I mean, how much fun have they had thinking about great players they could add in a trade, and then Gutekunst adds absolutely none of them? What's one more to the pile, right? It's just not how that team operates.
I know that we were talking about it earlier and that you kind of shut down that notion. But seriously, as an NFC North rival fan, like Ragnar retiring and Jaire leaving, don't know what that just dropped. Jaire leaving really only has positive impacts, I think, for a Viking fan. Like yeah,
of course.
Like maybe there's a world where all three guys step up and the Packers have this electric secondary and it's all like
but that
holly jolly
anyway.
Yeah, it's all holly jolly. The only way
this goes wrong is if Jaire goes to the Lions and is a star.
Yes, that is the only way that this becomes a real problem. So, I'm looking at obviously hope Frank Ragnow has a great retirement. Hope Jaire gets paid somewhere that's either Minnesota
talk about two players with different histories there. Frank Ragnow will play through any injury. Yes. Jaire Alexander can't play through any injury. But
I just look at the NFC North landscape and I'm seeing these are high impact players when they're on the field. So the Vikings and Bears, who need a little help catching up, I think have made maybe even if it's just some baby steps, a little steps towards, man, this division's going to be a lot of fun this year. And with the tough schedules, it really should be a close race. And I think the top two dogs took a little bit of a step back. So, all right, we'll see what happens. I'm sure we'll talk about it more this afternoon when we record the show that will be out Tuesday morning. So we'll have some more Jaire Alexander talk. We'll do a little bit more on the NFC North and what's exactly going on in that division. So it never ends, Ziggy. It never ends. The train keeps moving. All right, talk to you later.